The chance for tropical development in the Western Caribbean continues to grow, and it could come along with the opportunity for some flooding rain. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back at Meteo Mundo. Great to see you on a Friday. Hope things are going well. A lot to get into in this video. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about what's going on in this area in orange as the opportunity for tropical development there continues to grow. We'll take a look at what's going on across your area as well, and just deep dive into all the model data to what's going to be happening here in the Western Caribbean as we push into the weekend. Love to hear from you guys. As always, let me know in the comment section below what's been going on in your area, and we will jump right into this video. So we're already starting to see the Central American gyre and the moisture beginning to develop in the Southwest Caribbean. And that's kind of part one of what could end up becoming a tropical system farther to the north. This monsoon trough and all of the deep, rich moisture associated with it will continue to lift north over the weekend and get into the Northwest Gulf, and coupled with a little bit more spin in the mid and the upper levels of the atmosphere could produce the opportunity for this tropical development. Now, in the short term, we're going to be talking about some very heavy rainfall. And again, that has already begun to develop in portions of Panama and Costa Rica, and it's just going to stay wet in these areas, friends. So the first deal with this is going to be the opportunity for some very heavy rain in Central America, the Yucatan, and portions of the Western Caribbean. That's already developing in some areas on this Friday, and the opportunity will only go higher and higher over the weekend and into early next week. So for Nicaragua and Honduras, and eventually up towards Belize and Guatemala, and even the western sides of Central America towards the El Salvador areas as well, there's going to be a lot of rain, okay? Because there's even a lot of moisture on the Pacific side of Central America as well. Again, the Central American gyre is a very broad area of disturbed weather, but this whole area is lifting to the north, and that's going to provide the opportunity for the tropical development. But again, right now, we're looking at some heavier rain. Now, it's still relatively quiet northern sides of Honduras into Yucatan and Belize. We're going to get scattered showers and storms developing here as we go through the rest of our Friday, but the heavy rain will be setting in over the weekend. Right now, we're seeing a few showers trying to drift over portions of Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, Cayman Brac, more cloud coverage than anything else on this late Friday afternoon, but there'll be more rain pouring into the area as that rich moisture lifts up to the north. It's the same situation for our friends in Jamaica, where again, we've had some scattered rain the last couple of days. We've yet to really see it develop on this Friday as of now, but it's coming, right? And again, rain chances will be going up and the opportunity for some heavier rainfall in these areas. So we're going to stay wet over the weekend and early this week. Cuba will be associated with some heavier showers and storms as well. And some of this moisture has obviously been pumped north. Now, this is more localized than anything else in the northwest side of the Bahamas, but it's been a very active pattern here. A little bit more spotty in nature, especially in the central and southeast Bahamas for today, but it's been still very concentrated extreme northwest Bahamas. I'm talking about Walker's Key, Grand Bahama, including Freeport, Lucaya, High Rock, the Abacos, Bimini, the Berry Islands, back down towards Eleuthera, New Providence, Andros, all with good showers and storms again on this Friday afternoon. It's just been a very active pattern. We're still going to have one more day of high rain chances in this area. Again, watch out for the lightning. If you're going out on the boat, watch out for the opportunity for some localized flash flooding, especially because of the king tides that are a player right now in portions of our weather as well. Go back over to the enhanced satellite imagery here, take off the radar data, and we've had, again, spottier rain, but still some heavier downpours, even back down towards the Acklands and the southeast side of the islands here, Mayaguana area, on over towards Clarencetown, Long Island, Rum Key, San Salvador, trying to get a few spotty showers to also develop over the Turks, the Caicos as well. So again, decent rain across the Bahamas for today. Haven't had a ton so far in the Dominican Republic and Haiti so far on this late Friday afternoon. You see a few storms developing at the hour. They're going to be more localized in nature than anything else, but still some spotty or heavier rain. Otherwise, again, very hot afternoon in these areas. Same situation for our friends in Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands for today, okay? We've had a few storms developing right over central sides of Puerto Rico. That has led to some very heavy rainfall in a very short amount of time in these areas as well. So we got to watch out for that. You can see that there was what we call a special weather statement, which is just one criteria south or lower than a severe thunderstorm warning right in the central portion of the islands, no Corozal, to the south, to the west of Bayamon and San Juan. All right. So very heavy rain, very localized in nature though, right? Most of Puerto Rico for today has been hot, has been dry. These are your temperatures on the board right now, which again have been ranging, and sometimes it takes a second to quickly pop back on here. They're not in the 60s, I promise you. There we go, right around 90 degrees for San Juan for today. Nothing crazy, but it's been relatively hot. It's been dry through most of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands for today, and the same situation across the Leeward Islands as well. Look, we've had some spotty showers, again, mainly south of a line from Guadeloupe to the south. We haven't had a lot of rain for today for Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart, St. Martin, Barbuda, Antigua. We've had better rain and opportunities from Guadeloupe south, but especially Dominica for today with some passing showers. Martinique has gotten into the opportunity as well. You can see the lightning developing there. It's actually been a little bit drier for St. Lucia for today, trying to get a little bit more rain to develop back over St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados. It's been much quieter overall, SVG, St. Lucia, Barbados for today. Some of that moisture has lifted to the north, as I mentioned, Martinique and Dominica. And then down towards Trinidad and Tobago, we're actually trying to see a few showers develop at the hour. There is a code yellow for Trinidad for the heat. That's the bigger story, but we're also trying to temper that with a little bit of rain at the hour as well. No rain so far near Nueva Esparta, but trying to get a couple of showers there. And my friends in the ABC Islands, again, cross your fingers for a few showers and storms. It's also been breezy in the ABC Islands. Aruba's had a 30-mile-an-hour wind gust this afternoon. So that's what it looks like area-wide at the hour, with some areas of obviously very heavy rain, especially again, as we would imagine, with the potential developing tropical system in the Western Caribbean. As we get started for the forecast, appreciate you guys liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to Meteo Mundo. You want the latest forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas and the tropical updates. Thank you for sharing with your family and friends. So we are going to get into what's happening with this system. Actually, let me get back to the satellite data to begin with. Let's talk about, first of all, this orange area from the Hurricane Center. As of the 2 p.m. Friday afternoon advisory, the chance is now up to 50%, okay? Notice that it is turning north and west a little bit more. That is still going to be what happens in the short term. What happens beyond this in the central side of the Gulf of Mexico is still very much up in the air. Just because this is bowing west doesn't mean it's headed to Texas or Mexico, because there's still a lot of factors in play that could turn this back north or even northeast deeper into next week. This is just where it could develop, but you should not interpolate that it's just going to continue on a northwest track. As I mentioned, in the shorter term, we are going to start to get some heavy rainfall really settling in for all of Central America. I mean, literally all of Central America could see some very high rainfall totals over the next 5 days or so. The Yucatan, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, and Cuba, all with that opportunity for some very hefty rain. And here's why this is going to end up developing. I already mentioned the spin in the atmosphere, but this monsoon trough is going to continue to lift up to the north. And if you look at those wind barbs, you're going to see your counterclockwise rotation right there. And these yellows is the vorticity or the spin in the atmosphere. Normally with the Central American gyre, they're farther south, but they're going to start to get lift north, kind of in part with a trough coming into the Gulf of Mexico, lifting this north, creating this broad spin, and eventually, and more than likely, getting a low level of center of circulation to develop. But with all of this vorticity and spin and lift in the atmosphere over the northwest Bahamas, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Yucatan, Central America, it's an extremely wet forecast regardless of tropical development. But down the road, again, that is still likely to happen as well. So let's look at the reflectivity here on the GFS model. I'm going to go ahead and loop this up. We'll take a look at a week's time frame, and then we'll deep dive into some of this. Now, the GFS compared to yesterday is wetter for the Western Caribbean, including Jamaica. The GFS yesterday tried to cut off some of the heavier rain farther west, but now you can see how elongated east it is. And it could even throw some of these squalls and tropical moisture into Haiti, even as far east as the Dominican Republic, and maybe as far north as the Turks, the Caicos, and the southeast Bahamas. But friends, I just want you to see that in the short term here, and let me just expand this out, my biggest concern through Monday is excessive rainfall. It's not tropical development. This is going to be a super sloppy, disorganized area of very widespread rain. We're talking about over 1,000 miles, okay, with this kind of moving in. But you can see from Belize City to Santo Domingo and Lacaille and Port-au-Prince could all be impacted by this large spin coming in. And you can start to see some of that heavier rain over Kingston, Jamaica, over Grand Cayman, over Cancun, Belize City, the western sides of the Central America and the Yucatan as well. It's just an extremely wet forecast, okay? And then as we get into early to mid next week, we start to see this consolidate into a potential tropical system. Now on the GFS deterministic, the newest run here does have it a little bit more into the north central Gulf of Mexico, potentially headed towards East Louisiana, Alabama, or Mississippi. Yesterday, it was all on the west coast of Florida. But again, this is one model run of the deterministic, as I mentioned it yesterday, and I'll say it again. We don't put a lot of weight in one model run in one track, especially with a system that hasn't developed. We're going to look at those ensemble members, and that's a little bit more of a realistic idea of what could be happening. Again, we don't want to pinpoint one area as of yet, but just note again, we're now on day 6 of the GFS developing a tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico. So we can start putting more weight in the potential of that development, right? And the Hurricane Center is coming along with that as they up the rain, as they up the potential for tropical development in this area as well. So again, there's an opportunity that this could develop in the Northwest Caribbean, but generally speaking, it's going to be South Gulf of Mexico more than likely that we get a wrap-up. It could happen near the Cayman Islands. It could happen near Cancun. But the bigger story here is going to be just how much rain can actually fall in these areas. Let's take a look at the winds. This is going to be another story. I mean, the winds are going to be a big factor as well. Look, we're going to have some squalls. We're going to have some winds. They're going to be pushing, even again, outside of before we get a depression or storm, probably 30, 35 miles an hour. This is going to obviously kick up sea conditions for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands and coastal sides of the Yucatan and Central America and Cuba as well, even into the Straits of Florida and portions of Bermuda. If you understand what I'm trying to say here, this is going to be a widespread impact storm. Now, it may not be high-end widespread impacts, but there's a lot of wind and rain before this consolidates down into a low-level center of circulation. So let's talk about the winds. These are in gusts, but I want you to notice here, again, as we get into Saturday, Sunday, and then especially into Monday, Tuesday, now we really start to see some winds wrap up here Tuesday, Wednesday. Just taking a look at this here, if we query these winds, that could be over the Cayman Islands at this point in time, here onto our Wednesday. And this would be, by the way, on the GFS, the beginnings of the consolidation here. And you can see, and again, doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 40+ mile an hour wind gusts over Grand Cayman, but within the Northwest Caribbean, there's that opportunity, all right? And even towards Jamaica, there could be some gusty winds as well. Could be some gusty winds along portions of Honduras and Nicaragua, and some gusty winds here through the Yucatan as well. And then we start to see this thing really wrap up over the western sides of Cuba as we get into later in the week. Again, just on the GFS model, but now you start to see a potential depression or storm just as it exits, right, the Western Caribbean and into the Gulf. And again, on the newest run of the GFS deterministic, it is farther west than where it was. And again, you would be looking at some very strong winds here, potentially getting into high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane. All right. Again, that's the latest from the GFS run. I'll loop it up one more time, but just notice again how widespread and gusty these winds are going to be, even as far east as the Dominican Republic and Haiti, Turks and Caicos, portions of the Bahamas, but obviously more influenced here. And again, up the west coast of Florida, those winds could be very prominent. South winds as well could lead to some tidal surges later next week. We'll have to watch out for that as well. Just kind of a broad storm surge coming along with this. Let's now look at those ensemble members, right? So we looked at the main GFS, but now we're looking at the 51 members. It's like the family of the GFS model, okay? You're gonna see the opportunity of some potential development into Tuesday. This is a really slow loop, so we can take our time and look at this, right? So a few members have this trying to develop Northwest Caribbean. The majority, though, wait until either Wednesday or Thursday to develop this in the Gulf of Mexico, and all of these lifting north in some way. Some of them more north to northwest, some of them more north to northeast. This is paused Friday evening, okay? I want you to notice that the GFS ensemble members still have the entire Gulf of Mexico as a potential for where this developing system might be, okay? So we literally can't discount anything right now from North Mexico all the way to the west coast of Florida. Now, the GFS is slightly farther west overall, but again, they are still more focused in the central and the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico because there's a digging trough coming into the southeast United States, and ahead of that, winds will generally be out of the south and the west, which should try and turn this east a little bit if the timing of that trough is what the GFS is showing, okay? If it's a little bit slower, it might allow it to nudge farther to the north and to the west, which is why you do have a few members out west. But obviously the concentration is central in the eastern sides of the Gulf of Mexico. Look, some of them, and it's crazy to think about, are as slow as keeping the center in the Northwest Caribbean by next Friday, a week from now. Seems implausible to me at this point in time, and some of them already have a landfalling system in the southeast United States. Most of them are still somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico before landfall on Friday, so a week from now. Here's the European ensemble. It's the same time frame. You're going to see very similar solution here. Again, an opportunity of development, maybe late Tuesday, Wednesday in the Northwest Caribbean, but by Friday, you're still looking at ensemble members showing you that the entire Gulf of Mexico is still in play. Now, this time yesterday, there were more European ensemble members in the western side of the Gulf. There are still a few, but we've kind of started to see a little bit of a shift in the aggregate, if you will, of the European ensembles, either in the central or in the eastern sides of the Gulf of Mexico. Again, this is all still in play. And remember, this is a very likely thing, and it happens all the time, especially with a storm that does not have a true center of circulation as of yet, okay? It's the blessing and the curse of being able to look at these global models this far out ahead of time. We should expect there to be this kind of spread. That's what I'm trying to get at. This kind of spread is very logical at this point in time with this system, but it is a good heads up for the Northwest Caribbean and all of the Gulf Coast to keep a very watchful eye on this. You also notice that there's a huge spread in the intensity where you have some that are, high 990s, which would indicate a relatively weak tropical storm, maybe mid-tropical storm, and some that are much stronger than that, which would indicate a hurricane here in the Gulf of Mexico. So here's what I'm thinking as of now, as of this Friday. Still a very, very high chance that we're going to get a huge area of rain and storms in the Northwest Caribbean continuing to develop over this weekend. I've now turned it to a moderate high chance of a tropical depression or storm, so up from a moderate yesterday to a moderate high chance that we're going to get a developing tropical system either in the Northwest Caribbean, but a slightly higher chance in the southern Gulf of Mexico early next week, and still developing, meaning it's still unknown, the strength and the overall track of that tropical system, and of course, its localized impacts. That's still in the weeds, still be determined down the road. But for the Western Caribbean, okay, these are the areas that in the shorter term need to keep an eye out for some very heavy rain and some flooding as a possibility, okay? Heavy rain, high chance, flooding possibility, a potentially moderate chance in some of these spots. That would include all of Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Cuba, and then all of Central America and all of the Yucatan. I know that's a huge area, but what I just showed you shows how widespread some of this heavy rain is going to be. So any of these areas Could see some very heavy rainfall over the next 3 to 4 days, and some of that could lead to localized flooding. This is the European model. Rainfall totals over the next 7 days. And you'll see here into Sunday, a little bit of rain, but kicked in late Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Look at all of this get going. Look how widespread over the next 7 days. You have 2, 4, even 6 inches of rain. Now, the European model is slightly west from yesterday, but it's also much more expansive. So it still tries to pull in some heavy rain into Jamaica. And again, 4 inches of rain is 100 millimeters, 6 inches of rain is 150. And you look to the western sides of the Yucatan and into Central America, and you're looking at, you know, maybe 12 inches of rain in some spots. But even on our Caribbean sides, you're looking at 4, 6, maybe even 8 inches, maybe up to 200 millimeters in a couple of areas. And again, there's just a ton of red here, right? Still could see some heavier rain trying to get back into the Lesser Antilles as well. But obviously the influence of the Central American gyre in this potential developing tropical system is going to have the heaviest rain in our western zones over the next 7 days, but still some spotty heavier rain for the Lesser Antilles into Puerto Rico, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and portions of the Bahamas. But overall, these areas will be drying out a little bit, relatively speaking. As I mentioned, please keep an eye out for any boating interests in the Northwest Caribbean over the next few days into early and mid next week. And then, of course, down the road into the Gulf of Mexico. Unlike Francine, unlike Debbie, which were very small hurricanes, if this becomes Helene, or regardless of the strength, I think this is going to be a relatively large storm. Okay, that's what the models are showing right now, and you saw that expansive nature to things. So I think that we're going to have a very large area of kicked up surf and sea conditions, Northwest Caribbean into a lot of the Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, the track will have more impacts in certain areas, but I think we're going to have some pretty darn high wave heights in the Gulf of Mexico next week. We are looking better along the Lesser Antilles in the eastern side of the Caribbean, but still some fresh winds across the ABC Islands, kicking up some localized conditions there as well. So that's what the winds look like. Let's take a look at the overall rain here. And again, this is just out over 5 days, all right? This is the GFS model. The GFS model is farther east, as I mentioned, with some of this rain. That is a bullseye of a foot of rain sitting just southwest of Jamaica, all right? So we'll see how that spirals in. Let me take this out just a little bit longer in time. I'm gonna bring this out basically a week. And you can see that up the gut here on the GFS model, there could be some exceptional rain. Now again, I don't wanna focus on one area. It would probably not be fantastic to have a foot of rain in Grand Cayman, but you notice again that there's a sharp cutoff between Jamaica and Grand Cayman on the GFS model. I don't know if it's going to be that sharp. I don't know if it's going to be that narrow of a corridor for heavier rain. I think it's going to be more widespread, and hopefully we just don't see this foot of rain swath here. But again, Cancun has about 7 inches of rain in a couple of spots, even some decent rain into portions of Haiti on the Pacific side of Central America. That's a huge swath of over a foot of rain there. It's 300 millimeters, by the way, guys. You get to 12 inches. And again, pockets of heavy rain across portions of Belize and on over towards Roatan, 4 inches. But again, it's not really so much at this point in time to focus on one number, but just how widespread the heavy rain potential could be in all of these areas, okay? Let's get into the rest of the forecast here for the rest of our friends who aren't gonna be directly impacted by this area. So I'm gonna loop up again the models. By the way, I know we have 2 yellow areas out here, the remnants of Gordon, and this actually is a new invest. It's 96L, I believe. Yes, 96L. 10% chance for both of them. They're nothing, all right? Not gonna happen, not gonna even impact Bermuda in a direct way, all right? We'll be monitoring, and you can almost see this little spin here 7 days out. There will be one tropical wave coming off the West African coast that I'll be watching down the road. You can see this on the GFS holding together 7 days out. So it's a situation to watch out for. Otherwise, again, for the Lesser Antilles, we're gonna have spotty rain chances over the weekend. We'll see a little bit more moisture coming back in late next week, and the opportunity here by the end of the period, now this is a full 7 days out, but we could start getting into higher rain chances across this area with a fast moving tropical wave that may not develop into anything, but it's going to bring better chances for rain in these areas towards the mid to late portion of next week. An area that could be wedged in between the developing system out to the west and that tropical wave out to the east could be Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Still some decent localized rain chances here the next several days, but nothing outrageous, nothing too high in nature here. So watch out for the heat as well. We've had some excessive heat warnings for the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands in particular, portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands as well. Again, spiraling into the Dominican Republic and Haiti on the far eastern sides of this could be some decent tropical downpours Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. All right. I think this is still a big question mark whether this moisture gets this far east, but you can see on the GFS model it does. So for Santo Domingo and Port-au-Prince and Santiago de los Caballeros, watch out for some of that heavier rain. Obviously, we've hit on very much what's going to be happening in our western zones. For the Bahamas, we're going to start to dry out a bit here. Now, obviously, if this tropical system tracks farther east, we can start to be talking about more direct impacts here. At this point in time, that doesn't look to be the case. As I showed you, the ensemble members, kind of the farthest east would hug the eastern side of Florida. But is there still a possibility that the northwest and central Bahamas gets more scraped by this system? Absolutely. So that's something to monitor as well. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, it stays off towards the west. Rain chances for Freeport, Lucaya, and Nassau back down towards Exuma and the Acklands. They'll fall off a little bit here over the next few days. Friends, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for following us across all social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, it's myMediaMundo@gmail.com. Again, thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to Media Mundo if you want these latest updates. Have a great rest of your Friday, and I will be back soon with the latest information on that tropical disturbance and, of course, your local forecast right here at Media Mundo.